Under Justice Department policy, Robert Mueller, the special counsel, didn't believe he or any prosecutor had the power to charge Trump with any crime while he was still serving as president. But Mueller made very clear when his report was released that once Trump was out of office, oh, yeah, he could be charged as a former president.
Was there sufficient evidence to convict President Trump or anyone else with obstruction of justice?
We did not make that calculation.
Okay, but let me just stop. You made the decision on the Russian interference. You couldn't have indicted the president on that, and you made the decision on that. But when it came to obstruction, you threw a bunch of stuff up against the wall to see what would stick. Well, and that is fundamentally unfair.
I would not agree to that characterization at all.
Okay, but could you charge the president with a crime after he left office?
Yes.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
Yes. You could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office? Yes. 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 That's the whole point. And now he's left office. And the main witness for the 10-plus instances of alleged obstruction of justice in that report, that witness has just testified to Congress about what he saw and what the president tried to get him to do, confirming the allegations at their core. So now the former president could be prosecuted for those alleged instances of obstruction of justice. Any takers? Think there's any appetite for that in the U.S. Justice Department under Merrick Garland during the Biden administration? The Judiciary Committee has the option, if they want it, to make a formal referral to the Justice Department for potential prosecution of crimes they have become aware of. That, among other things, would require a response from the Justice Department as to what they were doing about that criminal referral. We know from ongoing current court battles that under the former Attorney General, under the Trump administration, the Justice Department never actually substantively considered the evidence against Trump and whether or not he should be charged. The Justice Department never looked at it. Now there's no reason why they couldn't look at it now. And he is only a former president now, so he's not protected anymore by any Justice Department policy that would grant him immunity. So, again, any takers? Is this all just going to slide? Why was this evidence all compiled? If the Justice Department, if federal prosecutors are never substantively going to look at any of that evidence, despite the fact that there's no prohibition on bringing criminal charges against somebody who committed crimes like this once they are no longer serving as president. Is there anyone considering a potential prosecution here? What was this evidence collected for anyway? The Boston Globe this week has just launched a kind of remarkable project. You should check this out if you can. It's not behind a paywall or anything. It's all up on the Boston Globe's website. You can access it for free. The Boston Globe this week is running a series of, they're editorials. They're more like arguments, more like essays, sort of as a public service. It's a series of 6. First one was yesterday. Second was today. There's 6 of them all together. They're going to run 6 consecutive days in the paper. All 6 of them are up on their website right now. But what this 6-part series is a 6-part series of recommendations for basically how to tyrant-proof the presidency in the wake of Trump. They're calling it future-proofing the presidency. But the idea is that if Trump comes along again, or if somebody else with the sort of corrupt or tyrannical mindset of a Trump approach to politics comes along again, how can we make sure that the presidency isn't abused? The presidency and its vast powers and its vast immunities aren't used to serve a corrupt and tyrannical purpose to try to hurt the country. Basic idea is that before we had somebody that bad and that destructive in office as president, as a country, we sort of thought that norms and rules and policies and strong recommendations and, firm precedent would be enough to constrain the worst behavior by a potential president. We thought that, stuff coming to light would bring about such shame and political opprobrium that a president wouldn't do the worst stuff, not if there were norms against it. We learned the hard way over a very hard 4-year period that those norms didn't hold. They weren't effective. He pardoned people for their crimes after praising them for not ratting on him. He installed his unqualified family members in higher-level government jobs and then directed millions of dollars in taxpayer funds to himself and his family's private business because he didn't divest from his family's private business. He took in payments even from foreign governments. He privately, while he was serving as president and making U.S. policy that served those foreign interests. I mean, even without all the obstruction of justice stuff, we're not even scratching the surface here. The point of what the Globe is doing here is that they're saying, listen, without reforms, the modern U.S. presidency under Trump was exposed as what they're calling a treasure map for an American tyrant. Quote, Donald Trump exposed the weaknesses in our system of government that could now be exploited by a corrupt leader with control of the White House. And so they have done this six-part series that sort of methodically lays out 6 major reforms and actions that the U.S. government could enact now. Things that the Trump experience shows we need before somebody else like that gets back into the presidency in order to make sure this doesn't happen to us again or worse. So, as I said, it's a 6-part series. The final one, step 6 of 6, is this one. It's titled, quote, The Case for Prosecuting Donald Trump. Quote, saving American democracy for the long run requires a clear condemnation of the Trump presidency. That means making clear that no one is above the law. Norms in a democracy are only as good as our willingness to enforce them. After the precedent-busting, law-breaking presidency of Trump, Congress needs to pass new laws to constrain future office holders. I mean, that's the case the Globe has made in this series. Curbs on the pardon power, safeguards against nepotism, broadening the power of Congress to investigate the president, protections for whistleblowers, requirements that presidents make financial disclosures to root out conflicts of interest. Quote, all of that is crucial to protect Americans against a repeat of the last 4 years. But imposing stricter rules on future presidents by itself is clearly insufficient. Those presidents also need a clear message, one that will echo through history, that breaking the law in the Oval Office will actually be punished, that ethics policies and legal requirements, both the existing ones and those Congress will hopefully enact in the future, those are more than just words on paper. Trump's presidency did not just expose glaring legal weaknesses. It also made clear that our institutions are incapable of holding presidents accountable for breaking even our existing laws. If Congress had played the role the founders envisioned, by removing Trump from the presidency after his criminality became clear in the Ukraine affair, that might have been enough of a deterrent to scare future presidents straight. But lawmakers didn't do that. So now there's only one way left to restore deterrence and convey to future presidents that the rule of law applies to them. The U.S. Justice Department must abandon 2 centuries of tradition by indicting and prosecuting Donald Trump for his conduct in office. Quote, that is not a recommendation made lightly. The longstanding reluctance to prosecute former leaders is based on legitimate concerns about the justice system being used to settle political scores. But filing charges against former leaders is not a radical step either. Foreign democracies, including South Korea, Italy, and France, routinely manage to prosecute crooked former leaders without starting down a slippery slope to authoritarianism. President Nicolas Sarkozy of France was recently found guilty of bribery, a decade after his predecessor, Jacques Chirac, was convicted of corruption. France's democracy and its image around the world remain intact. In the case of Trump, prosecutors would have plenty of potential crimes from which to choose. While Trump may be prosecuted for financial crimes he potentially committed before he became president, what is most important to go after are his actions during his time in office. And it goes on from there. As I said, this is from the Boston Globe, a remarkable series they are running this week from yesterday for the next 6 days. It's a sort of plea to the country, a potential map to save democracy from this kind of crisis ever happening again in the presidency.